talking about the zoning laws, the development issues in Sydney. We're talking about this area saying, look, you can't do it here. We're talking about that area going, we want it here. So it's a constant conversation in Sydney. Where should we put the development? How much do we need? The question, it doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any question that we're not going to need it. It looks like by 2040 we could easily have 6 million people in the Greater Sydney area. And as the Minns government keeps saying, we want to build up, not out, not just add more suburbs out to the west, but lots of areas along those transport corridors, those areas where the trains are stuffed. We need to get more apartments and more developments along there. So who's had the experience, now that those sort of things are clearer, that that's where things are going to be, that's where development's going to take place, have you had the experience of the developers turning up, someone knocking on the door, or the owners' corporation starting to talk to you about, we've had some offers and we need to consider this? How does it work? What should you do? What are the rules around it? What are your rights when this occurs? If you've had some experience or you've got questions, let us know on the text line 0467 922 702. Stephen Brell is New South Wales President of the Strata Community Association. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Is that becoming common?
It is becoming common. So to your point, there's been a lot of media lately about the push to increase density around the rail corridor. And with that, that means it's going to be a boon for developers and those residents living along the corridor. So there are opportunities out there for people that are looking to perhaps sell their properties.
And even if it's not quite settled, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's been obvious for a while this is where the development would take place.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, Sydney, always has the problem that it's landlocked. So, as Chris Minns has mentioned, the only way really is up. And they are looking to use that, critical infrastructure that we already have in place. And the rail corridor and the metro lines, provide that facility.
Is there, well, let's stay with strata developments, let's stay with apartment blocks. Is there a correct approach? Is there something that developers should do if they think that they've got if they want to approach a building?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the first thing they should do is approach the owners as a whole. So all owners should be involved in this process. And that's what they normally do, because it is easier for the developers if they get all the owners on board at the same time, rather than trying to pick off one unit at a time as each property sells. So, if the owners are approached, I would bandy together as a group of owners. And if they are interested in selling to a developer, understand, what their rights are, understand what the process is, understand particularly what value and what the developer can put onto the site.
Well, let's stay with that initial approach. I mean, are you saying that there should be a sort of formal letter sent to every owner going, we're interested, and here's a number?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly right. So what the owners would do is bandy together, understand, approximately what the value of their site is, and then what is a realistic sales price that the developer should be offering them.
Right. And then is it the owners corporation who should deal with this as well? Strata manager, who do they talk to?
Yeah, that's right. So what would happen from this point, if the owners get together, they would have to hold a meeting, okay? And they need what's called a 75% or a special resolution in order for this to pass. So 75% of owners need to be in agreement with this first up. Once they get to that point, they would then form what's called a strata renewal committee. And then that committee would be liaising with the specialists that are engaged by the owners corporation. So like your lawyers, your strata managers, your valuers, these sort of people, to guide them through the sales process.
Yeah. Because I suppose at this point, the owners have to realise that they have to represent themselves, right? It's because the strata manager might have a different interest.
Well, the strata manager will be representing the owners corporation, and that's the collective body. As you rightly point out, the individual owners should also go out and seek their own advice to make sure that their interests are protected as well.
So, sorry, each individual owner, like
each individual owner. So again, if a developer comes knocking on your door, I would be going out and getting expert advice for myself to make sure that the wool's not being pulled over my eyes, or I'm making sure that I'm getting the right amount of money for my property, as opposed to the other residents around me.
And who do you get? So who would you get that advice from?
You could get that. I mean, look, as a very cheap and simple starting point, you could probably ring your local real estate agent. Most local real estate agents are very accustomed to this type of process, and they know what the site's worth and they know what your apartment's worth, both as an individual sale and as part of a collective sale. Beyond that, you could probably go out and get some advice from a valuer who would come out and actually tell you how much your property is worth. That might cost you a few $100s, but it would also ensure that you are getting the value for your property that you deserve.
Yeah, we're talking to Stephen Brell, New South Wales President of the Strata Community Association, about what to do when the developers turn up. If you've had this experience, then share it with us. 0467 922 702 is the text line. You can text your story there or call us direct to 1300 222 702. We live near Hornsby and the for sale signs are on apartments and then sold within a couple of days. It seems to us possible that the developers are buying in now because this seems like fast sale times, and these apartments are within 200 metres of the rail area. Stephen Brell, I suppose there's nothing wrong with that, but if in a block of units, of say 10 or 12, something like that, well, if a couple start to sell, that can start to tip the balance, and that may not be in all of the owners' interests.
No, that's right. And what we do see is that some developers will, as you rightly point out, they'll start buying individual units with the purpose of wanting to develop the property. And then once they gain the majority control, they can make it very difficult for the other owners. So again, that's, it's not the best way to approach that. That's why a collective sale is far more beneficial for all the existing owners in the property itself.
Now, if all owners don't want to sell, what happens?
Great question. So there is a provision in the Strata Schemes Development Act, which is Part 10 of the Development Act in New South Wales, that if an owner doesn't want to sell, they have a right of appeal through the Land and Environment Court. Okay, and what the good provision of this legislation is that if an owner does object, all of their legal fees, their costs and everything that they take to the Land and Environment Court is actually paid for by the developer. Again, there is some protection there for owners that don't want to sell.
Right. And it's 75% now, right, of the bill. If 75% want to sell, right, then it's going to sell.
Yeah. Well, no, if 75% want to sell and one of the remaining 25% don't want to sell, they can go through the Land and Environment Court process. So that process or that protection is still there for those minority owners. Right.
But have we seen cases where it's been turned around because one or two don't want to sell?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So these provisions came into New South Wales in 2015, and since then there've been more than 250 collective sales of strata schemes in New South Wales. Of that 250 plus, only 7 have ever actually gone to the Land and Environment Court where an owner has objected. And I believe in most of those cases, the collective sale did go through, because what it was shown was that the owner wasn't being disadvantaged by the sale, and they were given appropriate compensation and allowances to make that process go through. So it is very rare that this happens. Like, collective sales are very common out there in strata land, particularly as buildings are coming towards the end of their economic life. And these disputes are also very rare as well.
So the disputes are rare. Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Because disputes over the colour of the windows seem reasonably common.
Well, yeah, that's right. Well, I think in this case, because when this legislation was put into place, there was a lot of thought put into it by the regulators to make sure that no one was disadvantaged. So I think because the process is so robust, and again, everyone is taken care of. So things like your professional fees are paid for, making sure that you are getting the right amount of money when you're selling your apartment. If you do need to be relocated, that those costs are paid for, and so forth. These type of things, which are written into the process, helps the process go through. So right. they want it to be simple and easy, make sure that no one was being ripped off or not being benefited by it. So again, there was a lot of thought put into it when it was first enacted.
Yeah. Does valuation become a strange figure at this point? Because I suppose the valuation of what this apartment is worth, if this is going to stay this apartment in this condition right now, is quite different to, well, now developers are sniffing around the apartment. Does value start to get a bit rubbery at this point?